Good morning, everybody. We're giving everybody just another minute to hop on the call before we get started today. It's so good to see all of you. If you are new, please tell us who you are and what organization you are with. And this is the time, just jump in and do it as we're giving everybody a minute to get on the call.
Good morning. My name is Kaya Thomas. I'm with the Santa Paula Animal Rescue Center. Officially, I'm fundraising, marketing, grant writing. Unofficially, I'm anything that needs to get done. Jump in and do it all. So thank you so much for having me today, and I appreciate all of that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Friday Animal Welfare Leadership Roundup Call. My name is Kristen Hassan. I'm the Maddie's Director of American Pets Leg and the Haas Project. And we are here every Friday. This is a leadership level call. So this call is really intended for leadership level staff, but you can decide if you fit into that category. If you are a person who's more of a frontline staff member and don't know, there is also a Monday call that meets every Monday, and Bobby can share a link for that. But you are welcome here and happy to have everyone here with us today. Before we get started into our agenda today, I want to turn it over to Mary Smith from Maddie's Fund.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Bobby. Good morning, everybody. It's really awesome to see you all. Today is a really special day. Two of my most favorite people are going to be talking. Caitlin Quinn from HeartSpeak will be here, and she always has great practical information for us. And Dr. Leslie Irvine, I'll tell you, I heard her at a conference on co-housing sponsored by My Dog Is My Home. And that woman literally blew my mind. I have no idea if she'll tell the story of how she came about to write the book, My Dog Always Eats First, but it is an incredible experience. And so I'm so excited that this is happening. So thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Bobby, for creating such a great agenda today. So I want to just remind you guys that 2022 is bringing a grant giveaway to these calls. Once a month, Maddie's Fund will be giving away $5,000 for the Friday call and $5,000 for the Monday call to any one of you lucky people whose name might be picked out of the virtual hat, so to speak. So Allison or Kelly, thank you, Kelly. She's posted a link to the registration to make sure that you can be part of this giveaway. And we're really excited to be able to do it. This is sort of reminiscent of when we used to have in-person conferences, and we used to do things at our booth to just get people excited about grants and support and philanthropy. And this is our way of doing this, thanks to our very own Dr. Lori Peak, who came up with this idea for us. So I also want to thank you all for the last 23 months putting up with listening to me before these calls start. Thank you, Kathy. Calm yourself. Kathy Duncan, our international representative, always is one of my biggest fan base. So thank you very much. But I love the chance to be able to just share a few things with you all. And I really appreciate the fact that you continue to show up for not only these calls, but for all of us on a regular basis. So it just seems like such a long time when life was different in 2019. And I think I might have tried to appreciate 2019 more if I'd realized what 2020 and 2021 were going to be like. But wow, hindsight is always 2020, and never it never helps otherwise. So I kind of feel like every day we have an opportunity to create new lessons, new opportunities to learn things, and then we have to figure out how do we carry all of that stuff to the next day. So I'm going to encourage all of you who are living in those states that have a snowstorm imminent to take a snow day. And I got this idea from Nicole. Thank you very much, Nicole. I really appreciate it. Get that sled out, get your snowsuit on, go make snow angels, go sledding, do anything that you can that is reminiscent of what you used to do when you were a kid, if you happen to be a kid where there was snow. Now, if you're living in a place that snow isn't possible, which is probably half of us, just go out and have your own fake snow day. Do something, take a walk, give your dog a bath, anything, just to kind of step away from what you normally do on a regular basis. Give your chance to think about something different other than all the work, the important work that each of you are doing, all the responsibilities that each of you are carrying every day. Please don't think that we don't know what you're going through. The beauty of these calls is that actually everybody on this call has is connected to the other person, because we're all sort of in the same boat. And getting that boat bigger and bigger and bigger actually kind of makes me feel better. So have a snow day, have a sun day, have a rain day, have any kind of a day you want, but take that time off and just do something for yourself. So with that, I'm out. Have a good weekend. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mary. Now we're about to turn to the national organizations for an update. But before we do that, I just want to ask if you, we hear all the time about the podcasts you're listening to and want to know today, are you listening to a podcast that is expanding your mind, changing your world, helping you think differently about something? Best Friends has a podcast. If you're not listening to it, you should definitely tune in. You should also tune in to Maddie's Fun Candid Conversations happening that you can listen to or watch and listen to. So animal welfare is really expanding how they are teaching and sharing information through audio, but there may be other things you're listening to. So my share for today is a podcast that I hope you all go listen to because it really made me think a lot about these calls. And so I shared the link to the podcast, and it is the podcast is a book called The Extended Mind: The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain. But in the podcast will probably make you go buy the book like it did for me. But it really is about how our brains can't handle just sitting in one meeting all day doing one thing, and that we really need to focus in this time on engaging with the world around us, paying attention to what is happening in our bodies. And it's about neuroscience. So it's like about how the brain works and why this stuff is so important. But it was so many folks feeling burned out and stuck and tired. This book offers a lot of guidance for how you can think differently about your own mind. And just as a teaser, it says the brain is not a computer. And that's really how the book starts. So I wanted to share that, but now we want to know, are you listening to anything that is changing your world or something that's just fun, like a true crime podcast? If you are, please share the link and a brief description in the chat. Or does anyone want to share out loud something they're listening to that they are loving right now?
Kristen, I'm going to call out you mentioned the Maddie's Candid Conversations, and Allison has kindly put a link to our next one, which is next week. It is January 20th, so everyone register for that one. It's going to be James and Jennifer Evans of CARE, and it's going to be quite a fascinating session. So I hope you'll all join us.
Great, thank you. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Okay, it looks like a lot of people are putting things in the chat. People Are Animals too, an animal welfare podcast about people. I did not know about this. That sounds awesome. Cool. These are great alternatives to TV and social media. So awesome. The 10% podcast. Cool. So we always share the information about these afterwards. So it looks like there are a lot of good shares happening. So we'll put together a list and share it with you all too. This is awesome. Okay, so now we are going to move on to our national organization partners. If you are a national org, you're here to share something, go ahead and jump in. And Kathy, I know you have to go, so why don't you kick it off and share with us first?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kristen. So for those of you who are new, I'm Kathy from Canada. You can see the mock-up behind me. And I'm here from Humane Canada and want to let you all know that our Summit for Animals is happening in May of this year, 2022, and it will be throughout the entire month. It's going to be a hybrid event, so we'll have some online stuff for 3 of the 4 weeks, but we have an in-person piece too. May 12th and 13th in Banff, Alberta, Canada, which is the mountains. It's gorgeous. And our events team has secured an amazing resort at the Fairmont Banff Springs. And as extra enticement, I can tell you, you heard it here first, Kristen Hassan will be presenting in person at Banff. So look forward to see you all there. Registration's open. In-person spaces are limited, so get in there now. Thanks, Kristen.
Probably more exciting than me is my co-presenter, which is Dr. Gunther, who has presented on this call about her book, The Lives and Deaths of Shelter Animals. So thank you, Kathy.
Hi all, it's Lindsay Hamrick with the Humane Society of the United States. And on the conference front, we know folks have questions about whether Animal Care Expo will be happening. So I just wanted to give an update on that. It's very, very unlikely that we are going to cancel Expo. For folks who maybe aren't in the conference realm, the contract we have with the venue was put in place years ago before the pandemic. And if we were to cancel, unless the state of Florida determines an emergency, we would lose a significant amount of money. So instead, what we're going to do is we're still moving forward with planning in person. It'll be April 19th to the 22nd in Orlando, Florida. There is a virtual track, so some of the sessions will be available virtually, but not everything. And there'll be really strict requirements around COVID. And also we fully understand that folks may not be comfortable traveling by April. So if you're waiting to see if we're going to cancel, know that it's very unlikely, but if you're waiting to see how comfortable you are, we totally understand that. I'll put a couple links in the chat about our safety protocols too.
Hello, this is Jamie with the Human Animal Support Services Project, and I wanted to share, again, our Java-likes. They are peer support groups that are really here for you and your staff. We know that there's been a lot of turnover. We know that you have new staff coming in, and these Java-likes that we have in place right now are really a place for them to come talk to, folks that have been in the field for a while. And just work with their peers, talk to their peers. It's not a working group, so it really is just a place to come and talk and build friendships. And we have currently the behavior Java-like, community engagement Java-like, foster Java-like, field services, philanthropy, and marketing communications that are live right now. We will be adding more this year, but these are the ones that are ready for your team to register for.
Hi everyone, Claire Callison from American Pets Alive, and just wanted to let you know we have a webinar coming up. It's more of a really informal, honest conversation about adoptions, and restrictive policy. So even if you are a small rescue or have been doing adoptions for a very long time, I think it's really going to be helpful. We have really inspiring speakers, and it's going to be great for your staff to attend as well. So it's January 18th at 5 p.m. Central, and I will put the link in the chat to register. Thanks.
Hey, it's Amy Sadler from Dogs Playing for Life. I'm also going to share a webinar that we have coming up that's free for everyone to attend, and it's fancy footwork and it's practical solutions, basically practical handling and training solutions for the entire shelter. And I'm a doof and hit free webinar and then didn't put the rest in. So I'll get that done correctly now.
Okay, so I wanted to share when I talked about this podcast, People Are Animals Too, I got about 6 private chats saying that's a Maddie Evans podcast. So shame on me for not knowing, and everyone now go listen to People Are Animals Too, hosted by our very own Maddie Evans. And now I'm certainly going to go listen to it as well. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. And with that, let's move on to our first speaker of the day. We're joined by Caitlin Quinn of HeartSpeak and Casey Spain of American Pets Alive. They're to talk about a new collaboration that is going to be providing much needed tools and hopefully save you hours and hours and hours of time in your organization. So Caitlin and Casey, welcome.
Thank you so much. Last week when we were going to talk, I was going to say Happy New Year, but now that feels like it was a really long time ago. So instead, I will say Happy Friday. And Casey is going to go ahead and share her screen because we're just going to give you a really quick walkthrough of this communications kit that we built together. And before we even really get into it, I want to give a huge shout out to Casey, but also Sarah Miller and Aaron Greenwood, who are both also on the call. This was truly an act of collaboration and a meeting of the minds. So I can't take any kind of full credit for this. The impetus for these communications kits was really this idea that if we're going to enact change in our communities, if we're going to, start new programs, we really need to look at communications as an integral part of that. So if we're not keeping the community informed about new programming or slight changes to maybe what they have viewed our mission as historically, communicating those changes and really taking people on that journey with us is so incredibly important to the success of any kind of programming that we're doing. So we really looked at these as a multimedia kind of choose your own adventure toolkit so that you can mix and match different pieces. So this is the landing page that you'll come to. And if you scroll down a little bit, Casey, you'll be able to read this on your own time, just kind of giving an overview of the toolkit itself. And these will be a recurring series. So each month we're hoping to release a new toolkit, and everyone will follow this same format. So we'll start with a page called Learn About It. We'll move into a section called Talk About It, and then there's a dive deeper section. And in the interest of time, we'll just go ahead and show you those. So these are all housed in Google Drive. So when you hit download, you don't have to actually download anything onto your computer or your phone. So hopefully we're looking at them as being very mobile friendly as well, because they'll open right up in whatever browser you use. Do you need me to show?
Second.
Oh, that's okay.
Pulling them up right now. There we go. I was like, how do I switch screens and still share? I feel like I'm tech savvy when I need to be.
I'm right there with you. So every single toolkit kind of looks like this. We have a start here document that just gives you an overview, but then Learn About It is the first kind of on this journey of, especially when we're going to be covering future topics like keeping families together. We want to give an overview to anyone who is maybe new to these kinds of topics, because the goal of these toolkits is to be very accessible and applicable to anyone working on our field and really interested in this kind of work. So this gives a very brief overview and always kind of like an explore more, get into a little bit more if you would like to. And then when we move on to the second kind of piece of these packages, the Talk About It section, that gets into maybe a little bit more utilitarian communications. So in this kit, we have a press release template. So a lot of the work is done for you. You can really just customize with your organization's contact information and an important and relevant quote to your community. So you want to be making those kinds of changes, but we tried to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Same thing with the media pitch template, a lot of really amazing work already done. And these were written by Aaron Greenwood, who is an amazing writer. So you can kind of rest assured that that they're very concise and very accessible to the community. And then we have another section that we're calling talking points. And the reason that we didn't design these toolkits, maybe as some of the other HeartSpeak toolkits have been designed with a real social media kind of focus of here's a social post, just use this. We went with talking points because we're hoping that you can use these in a number of different ways. So these should be good for media interviews. These should be good for social posts or for newsletters. So really, again, taking a very multimedia approach to mix and match these things, use them as will be the most useful for your particular situation in your community. And then we have graphics templates. So some of these are definitely, optimized for social media. So the first one is a carousel of images that would be great swipeable on Instagram, but you could also use these on Facebook. You could also embed these in different places, like a recurring spot in a newsletter. And we have several other graphics that really could take on a lot of different lives. So whether you are presenting these things to maybe your board or a board of commissioners in your community, we're hoping that we tried to choose a variety of graphics that would really, again, take on multiple purposes and multiple uses. And they are customizable. So you can add your own logo, you can add your website and your contact information, and really kind of take ownership over that message for your community. So these are the last few of those. And then we have the final section of these toolkits is really, I think, the hidden gem of some of this is called Dive Deeper. And I'll let Casey talk in a moment about the FAQ section, but just the briefest of overviews of this is we're trying in each toolkit to make this section play multiple purposes. So the first being some real life examples. So some inspiration from our fellows in the field. Also tips and tools for talking about some of these things. So tips on here's what we've seen as successful in communicating these certain ideas, maybe phrase it this way and not so much that way. So there's some don't say this, do say that here. And then we get into a big section on frequently asked questions that we're hoping that will be used, again, very much like the talking points in a variety of ways. So you could certainly use these on your website and just kind of copy paste, build a page on the website. You could use this as a recurring series on social media, in newsletters, in your talks with media or media pitches. And then my most favorite section of this is no cost or low cost implementation. So we have some ideas on programmatic implementation of some of these kinds of community focused programs, and a real effort to make sure that there's understanding that there are no cost ways to do some of this. Casey, do you want to say anything else about the FAQs?
Yeah. So you may be thinking, how do we know what works and what doesn't? How would we know what to say? And so you may or may not know this, but we've had a marketing and communications working group that's been running for the last 20 months. And that is a group of very dedicated marketing and communications professionals from shelters. And they're the ones that have been running through trying this, sometimes not doing well with it, and we've learned from it, and sometimes doing really well with it. They've talked about these different programs, these different changes that are happening in their organization and the benefits to their community. And so that's how we got to this section. We've really learned what resonates with community members and what doesn't. And sometimes it's surprising. And so we're hoping that with this, you'll be able to easily look at these frequently asked questions, customize them for you, and plug them right into your website as you start to make changes in your organization. So we would love, love, love your feedback on all of this. I think this all is stuff that we are constantly learning and growing from. And so these are live documents, so we can make changes to them anytime. If you have a piece that you think is valuable, or you just don't know anything about this and you're not sure how to use it, our marketing communications job alike is there for you. Caitlin and I are both in that group. And so you won't have strangers. We'll have some familiar faces if you join that group, and we'll have time and people in there that are willing to mentor you through this, or mentor your staff or volunteers if you don't have marketing staff through this.
Thanks, y'all. It looks like we had a technical question in the chat, so maybe you can respond to that in the chat. But if you see something in here and you think that's way off, or this is a red flag, like I just saw something, it says like, does this mean you don't pick up stray animals? Well, in my last community, we didn't pick up stray animals, never. And so people had to bring them unless they were hurt or ill. So I think there's language that you're going to notice that you're going to say, ooh, this may not be relevant to every community or my community, or this could create an unintended consequence. Don't sit on it and stew. Let us know if there's something that you think needs feedback. You can give feedback really easily. And so that'll help us make sure these documents are really relevant for as many orgs as possible. And thank you, Caitlin and Casey.
Thank you.
Caitlin, is there anything you want to add in closing?
No, I do want to quickly address, there is an error on the website right now. And I'm going to work on it as soon as we get off this call, but you don't have to be a member or log into anything to download those. They're completely free and accessible.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our speaker for today. Dr. Leslie Irvine is with us today. She wrote this awesome book. It is called My Dog Always Eats First, Homeless People and Their Animals. And she's going to be doing a brief presentation. We're going to be asking her some questions. And so welcome, Dr. Irvine, to the call today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I've seen some faces I know and some names I know. I've been studying people and pets and animal sheltering for a couple of decades, and I appreciate all the hard work that you all do. So I'm going to begin by reading an opening story from the book. This occurred probably about 25 years ago now. Summer afternoon in Boulder, and if you've ever been here, up at 5,000 feet, the sun gets searing hot. I'm driving along. I see a man standing in a median on a busy street with a sign, homeless, hungry, anything helps. And he's got a dog with him. So I pull over, hop into the nearby convenience store, grab a bottle of water, get the bowl out of the back of my car that I have for my dog when we're on hikes, and I trot over to the median and I approach the man. And so here's where I'll pick up. Without acknowledging me, he shifted to the very edge of the median and held the sign out to the side of me. I offered him the water and the bowl for his dog. I don't need it, he said, keeping his eyes on the cars with their potential donors. Oh, and by the way, there's a profane word coming up if you have any young children nearby for whom that might be inappropriate. Your dog looks thirsty, I replied. He's okay, he said matter-of-factly. I got plenty of water. He reached down and lifted the flap on one of his packs to reveal a gallon jug. Okay, I said, do you have food for him? Yup, he said, still no eye contact. He tapped his foot on the other bag so I could hear the crunch of dog food. Okay, I said, and I crossed back over to my car. By this time, a woman I knew from my volunteer work at the local Humane Society had also pulled over. She was concerned about the dog too. I told her what I had done and about the man's response. She thought we could pool our money and buy the dog from him. Together, we came up with nearly $60, most of it hers. The guy should be happy to get some real money, we reasoned. After all, he's begging for change and we'd offer him dollars. We crossed over to the median together. My friend attempted some pleasantries and then said, we'd like to buy your dog. You can't have my dog, he said. Leave me alone. I explained our logic to him. You're begging for spare change and we can give you more than you'll make here all afternoon. Your dog will have a good home. Get out of my face, he said. I'm not selling my dog. We persisted. We took turns telling him how his dog deserved a better life. He might not have chosen homelessness, we said, but his dog had not. At this point, he looked straight at us and exploded. You fucking yuppies. Why don't you mind your own fucking business? I take good care of my dog. He has a great life. He runs around in the forest all the time. He never has to be on leash except when we come down here. He's got food. He's got water. He's had his shots. He never leaves my side. He's fine. Now get the hell out of here and leave me alone. We crossed over to the gas station where we shared our outrage and our frustration. We had one last idea. We would call animal control. Cell phones hadn't yet become ubiquitous, and I used the station's payphone to make the call. When I reached the dispatcher, I told her about the homeless man and the dog on the median and gave the location. Is he harming the animal? She asked. No, I replied. Is the dog in distress? She asked. No, I answered again. Does the dog have food and water? Does the owner have food and water for him? Yes, I responded. Well, then there's nothing the officers can do, she said. He's not doing anything wrong. I was not convinced. I thought he was doing something wrong. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on, no mistake he could correct. Instead, the whole picture just looked wrong to me. My friend thought so too. It troubled us that such a man had a dog. We felt sure that he couldn't provide proper care. We believed that a dog could have, should have a better life. For us, that life would have meant 4 walls, a roof, and even a yard. It would have involved toys, crate training, and doggy daycare. For the young man on the median, a good life for a dog meant freedom, the outdoors, and constant companionship. Over time, through my research on people's relationships with animals in other contexts, I realized that having a house did not imply that the dog or cat who lived there would have a good life. Long before I began the research for this book, I began thinking about the issues that animate it, such as what it means to care for and be in relationship with an animal and the role of the animal in one's sense of self. Years after that incident, I got an email from a publisher and they were interested in doing a book on homeless people who live on the streets with pets. And I said I would do a pilot project and interview some people and see whether it could become a book. Now, before I agreed to do the research, I saw a lot of guys like this one and their female counterpart and his female counterpart. But once I had said I'd do it, they disappeared, or I only saw them when I wasn't ready to do interviews. I did talk to a bunch of people who hung around in Boulder, but it was inconsistent. And if I was going to keep trying to recruit people that way, it would take me forever to get enough people to talk to. You know, if you want to talk to homeless people, you can go to any homeless shelter or soup kitchen, but most shelters don't allow animals, so you won't find pet owners there. So I had to figure out how to find people who were under the radar. And through the miracle of the internet, I got in touch with veterinarians who run street clinics for the pets of the homeless. Connecting with the veterinarians was an incredible opportunity. The technicians and the clinic volunteers introduced my project to clients during interviews. They listed names of people willing to be interviewed, and I worked my way down the list. In addition, I got to tag along with veterinarians on house calls, so to speak, to places I never would have gone to on my own, like this encampment under the freeway in San Francisco. Overall, the book is based on interviews with 75 people in 5 American cities. Most of the pets were dogs, except for, a handful of cat owners. And they were dogs, especially for those who slept on the street or moved around a lot. Most had a single pet, but a surprising number had 2 or more animals. There are many, many ways of being homeless. And I'll summarize just to give you a sense of the norm I met among during doing the research. Most people lived on the street or outdoors or in a vehicle and had been homeless for over 2 years, with one man living on the street in Miami for 23 years. A number of people had bounced between housing and the street many times over their lives. A lot of the homeless youth described themselves as traveling rather than homeless, and some people preferred the term houseless to homeless. Now, initially, I wanted to find out how they could afford to feed their animals, and I thought I would provide small bags of dog and cat food in appreciation for their time. But I soon learned that feeding their animals was the least of their worries. And that's how the book ended up being titled, My Dog Always Eats First. I also wanted to understand what the relationship was like between homeless people and their pets. In the book, I discuss the different meanings that people assign to their pets and how those meanings reflect the circumstances and experiences of homelessness. Today, I'll discuss just 2 of those to give you a sample, and I'll conclude with 3 lessons I learned from homeless pet owners. The first type of relationship I'll talk about involves describing the pet as friend and family member, and sometimes one or the other or both. For example, a woman I call Max and her dog rented a room in a house with her husband. The place was a squat or an unoccupied residence. And when I asked why they paid rent for a squat, Max told me that she paid to the man who found the house. They designated himself as the landlord, and they preferred paying for an illegal squat to sleeping in Max's truck, which they had done for several weeks. Max saw no other options that would allow them to keep their dog. As she explained, finding a place to sleep has been the hardest thing, but if my dog's not welcome, hey, you know what? I only go where my dog's welcome. I didn't bring her into this situation just to dump her off in the street or put her in a kennel somewhere. It's a lifelong commitment. We're family. So in accounting for why she let herself be exploited by an illegal landlord, Max justified her actions in terms of her commitment to keeping her family together. I found that the newly homeless invested a lot of effort in trying to get off the street, and they often framed their animals as their incentive for trying to do so. For example, at one clinic, I met Isaac, an African-American man in his 20s, and his dog, Raja, a pit bull. Isaac was in a treatment program for addiction to cocaine and heroin. He had stayed clean for a number of years, but he had relapsed recently and ended up on the streets. And I asked him what his experience was like. He said, oh, it was pretty bad, he said. Then he shook his head and got honest with himself and with me. And he said, it was terrible, actually, but I felt a little better because I had him with me. We had a blanket, so it was okay, but it was still rough. I didn't want to stay rough like that. So that's why I came into treatment, so we could have a better life. I got tired of living the way I was living. Having him, I realized I didn't want to live like this. I didn't want to make the dog suffer. My best friend living like this, homeless. I need to get myself together. I can have me a better life and he can have a better life. That's how I looked at it. One of the many things that struck me about the experience of homelessness is how very much time homeless people have to spend waiting and how they have to figure out to make time pass, often in public spaces. And those who have dogs found this a little bit easier. For instance, I met Austin and his little terrier. Austin had lost count of how many times he'd been homeless. He sometimes stayed with friends, but he wore out his welcome, and he was sleeping outdoors when we met. And he told me how this meant waking up early, often being roused by the police, and having to find ways to legitimately hang out in public. As he told me, it's lonely when you have to find somewhere to be at 6 in the morning until like 9, 10 when things are open. And if you have a dog companion with you, it gives you something to do, somewhere to go. You can come out to the park and sit out here longer than you could do if you were by yourself. If I didn't feel the way I do about him, I wouldn't have him because it's a lot of hassle sometimes. But he's family, and so he's with me all the time, and that helps. Now, describing an animal as a friend or family member depicts the owner as a responsible and committed person. In studies of street life, salvaging a sense of self-worth consistently ranks as the most challenging and important task the homeless face. The act of defining an animal as friend or family member, words so easily taken for granted, represents a way to construct and maintain a sense that whatever circumstances you might be in, you're basically a good person. The other theme I'll briefly share is when the person describes their animal as having saved or changed their life. First, I'll tell you about Tommy and his dog, Monty. Tommy was about 40 and had been homeless for about 10 years when we met. In accounting for his situation, he said he had been a bad kid, in his words. I stole and did drugs, he said, fighting, stabbing, shootings, years of abuse. Tommy had been unable to work since he witnessed a fatal accident on a job site. And he described himself as not mentally stable, and he was living on supplemental security income. As he told me about what his dog Monty meant to him, I found his story interesting, but mostly more of what I had already heard from other people. My dog is my best friend, he protects my camp, and so on. And I'd almost turned off the audio recorder when Tommy said, Monty also got me off alcohol and drugs, and got me off drugs. Now I'm sober and healthy. I asked Tommy how Monty had done this. He said he had gotten sober during a stint in jail, as horrible as it is to imagine. After his release, he felt like he was beginning to get his life back on track, but Monty provided the motivation he needed. When I got out of jail, Tommy said, I told myself that I would never drink again or smoke again. And I told that to Monty. And every time I want to go get a drink, he just looks at me, almost shaking that head, saying, you know what you just went through the last 35 years. Now, pet owners, myself included, we often create kind of lovable but simple-minded identities for our animals, especially for dogs. In contrast, Tommy constructed a nearly heroic identity for Monty, one that surpassed his own in a moral sense. He gave Monty the identity of an older brother or a knowing uncle, someone wise to Tommy's ways, who knew that the past wasn't worth repeating. As a kind of a silent witness, Monty reminded Tommy to keep to the straight and narrow path by staying clean and sober. Another example, Denise had lived in her car with her cat, Ivy, for over 8 months when we met. She had been self-employed as a graphic artist, but severe depression caused her to miss deadlines. She lost some major clients. Her other accounts gradually dwindled away. She fell behind on her rent. Her landlord evicted her. She tried to find a place to live before she had to move out of her apartment, but when time ran out, she put her belongings in a storage unit and moved into her car with Ivy. The eviction made it hard for Denise to find another apartment, as it does for other people. And in addition, being middle-aged and single with no children made her ineligible for a lot of the housing programs for the homeless. So having Ivy made finding housing even more difficult. When I asked Denise if she had considered finding Ivy another home, Denise shook her head emphatically. She said, she was a bit distant when I first adopted her, and then she grew to know me, but she's very frightened still of new people, new situations. So I've kept her pretty protected. And that's why when I became homeless, I didn't want to give her up, even though I know I'd have a lot of housing opportunities if I didn't have my cat. So although Denise felt she was protecting Ivy and doing the best thing for her, people often told her she had no right to keep a cat in her circumstances. When I asked how she responded, she said, I have a history with depression up to suicide ideation, and Ivy, I refer to her as my suicide barrier. And I don't say that in any light way. I would say most days, she's the reason why I keep going, because I made a commitment to take care of her when I adopted her. So she needs me and I need her. She is the only source of daily steady affection and companionship that I have. The only one. I can't imagine being without her, wanting to go on at all without her. Denise's story shows how the dependence of animals can draw on and highlight an owner's sense of responsibility. Denise described feeling an obligation to Ivy and wanting to fulfill it by protecting her. This responsibility became Denise's reason to keep going and even to stay alive. For both Tommy and Denise, the fulfillment of the obligation associated with the commitment to the animal requires a sacrifice, whether giving up drugs and alcohol or deciding to live in a car. But the perceived love the animal provides and the accompanying sense that one matters rewards the sacrifice. By being worthy of the animal's love, the owner casts him or herself as a good person. As I wrap up, I want to make clear that I don't think an animal's love solves any of the material problems of life on the streets. And I'm not suggesting that pet ownership is a panacea for homelessness. Instead, I'm pointing out the ways that homeless people talk about their animals helps them deal with their situation. When I reflect on the relationships homeless people described, the strength of their bond didn't surprise me. I didn't find it remarkable that homeless people love their animals. What surprised me were the aspects of their relationships that I have never had to consider. And in closing, I'll offer 3 lessons I learned from homeless pet owners. First, I have never had to defend my right to have a companion animal or my ability to care for one, nor has anyone ever called me unworthy of an animal's companionship. Many of the domiciled or the housed consider it wrong to have a companion animal if you don't have a home, as I did at one time. Most of the homeless people I talked to had heard this criticism regularly. When I asked homeless people how they responded, most pointed out that they did care for their animals and that having a house doesn't guarantee that a person will provide a dog or a cat with a good life. Instead, they defined a good life for an animal in terms of constant companionship. One young man captured this well when he said, "I tell them, my dog is with me 24/7. He gets to be in the sunshine and fresh air. He gets plenty of exercise. Where's your dog? Home alone in a crate?" Second, and related to the man's point about having his dog with him 24/7, those of us who are housed don't have to plan our every move around the constant presence of our animals. Sure, we can arrange care for them when we travel or if we work long days, but we can leave them alone while we go about our day. Homeless people can't even use a public restroom or go into a soup kitchen without considering their animals. And because friendships on the streets can be short-lived and questionable, they can't always count on others to watch their dogs. One woman learned that the quote unquote friend who agreed to mind her dog for a few hours had gotten bored and turned him loose. "I was down at animal control every day," she told me. "I was scared to death. Fortunately, the dog turned up." Some people have resolved the 24/7 problem by obtaining documentation or vests for emotional support animals. And technically, this applies only to housing, but the confusion around what counts as a service animal has left a lot of wiggle room for public places in general. Third, most of the domiciled never have to worry that our animals will be taken away from us or even killed. Homeless people often face the fear that police or animal control officers will confiscate their animals. Several people described police officers pulling their guns on dogs they had left to temporarily guard their gear and campsites. 2 people had had their dogs killed by police officers who assumed they were vicious. A few people who had gone to jail for minor offenses learned on release that their dogs had already been killed in shelters. Denise constantly feared that a well-meaning stranger would see a cat locked in a car and assume animal cruelty and call animal control. Officers would then confiscate the cat, and she would lose the only family she had. Many people I met vigilantly kept their animals vaccinated, licensed, and microchipped so that, as one man said, if anything happens, they can't take him away from me. So when we consider the bond that homeless people have with their animals, it's easy to focus on the strength of the love, and it's not wrong to do so. But as the 3 lessons I learned show, however, the human-animal relationship also poses unique challenges for those on the street. And these experiences too, not just love and support, are part of their everyday lives. Coping with them reveals the commitment homeless people make to their animals. And I want to thank you for your attention. You can, I understand we have a little Q&A here, and please note my email if you'd like to reach out. I'd be delighted to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irvine.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
Really beautiful presentation. After reading the book, have so many questions. And if you haven't picked it up, this one's worth having on your shelf for so many reasons, particularly if you work in a shelter and you are trying to improve your practices involving people experiencing homelessness. Dr. Irvine, we have such a small amount of time, and I really want to get right to the hard questions because this is a group of people who can make a difference. And I think most of us on this call agree that everyone deserves the love of an animal. And so I want to just tell one personal story that in my last role at Pima Animal Care Center, I got a call from a California shelter director asking if what we would do how they would go about buying all of the dogs owned by homeless people in their community. And we're quite seriously considering a $200 a dog or a $200 a pet, buying all the pets from folks. And this was probably a couple of years ago. They didn't end up going through it, but I tell that story to point to that these are really real, feelings about people experiencing homelessness and pets have really real implications, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. And then the last thing I'll say is that we did adopt 2 people experiencing homelessness, and I probably had no greater political fight during my time with rows and rows of people at meetings crying because they felt that the life of a pet owned by a person experiencing homelessness would be so horrible. And so for those of us that want to fight this fight and do want to change our policies and practice, what do you recommend? How do we even have a starting point when these are some of the sentiments we're dealing with?
Wow. Yeah. Well, if there's a simple script that you can come up with, the animal control officers I talked to in San Francisco said they had far more cases of abuse and neglect among the pets of the housed than of the homeless. And a good life for a dog probably doesn't mean being left home alone all day. And homeless people who have dogs, there are some bad eggs among them for sure, but there are many, many bad owners who have roofs over their heads too. And if you can find a way to, I'd be happy to help anyone with the language around that, but if you can find a way to develop a concise statement, that usually works for me. I'm not quite in the position that you're in where you have, boards of directors and citizens coming back at you. But this question of what a good life is for a dog is, one that's worth raising, I think. And you can get data from veterinarians and animal control officers. The pets of the homeless are not starving. They're generally healthy in a very basic sense. And yeah, they're I feel like I'm running out of ways to say this, but I don't know, would that help, do you think?
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And we are going to take you up on that offer. So we need those talking points are really critical. I know Susan Rakes has her hand raised. So Susan, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Susan Riggs with the ASPCA. Just as background, ASPCA has just created a new role that I am filling, which is Senior Director of Housing Policy. So this is a big focal point of the ASPCA now. And just thank you, Dr. Irvine, for the presentation. It was really informative. And you referred to San Francisco. The state of California actually, through some of the work that the ASPCA and other animal welfare organizations have been doing, has created a program called the Pet Assistance and Support Program that allows for retrofitting of homeless shelters to allow for co-housing. And I think that is probably one of the most important things that we can do in the animal welfare field, is to encourage homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters to retrofit their facilities to allow for co-housing. And it's a very cost-effective thing to do. And actually, what I wanted to mention is we're working on that right now in Colorado, right in your backyard, Dr. Irvine, and we may call on you to help us with some testimony. The governor's office is very, very supportive of this, but every state should be looking at this right now. The grant amounts in California are between $100,000 and $200,000. Super cost effective, and also allow for veterinary support and behavioral health support, because we not only want to support the housing needs, but also the long-term success of both the animals and the humans. So no question, sorry for this soliloquy, but just wanted to make you aware that there are big efforts going on in multiple states right now.
Well, a quick follow-up for you, Susan, and for others in the group. If you don't already know about the group, My Dog is My Home, I know there are a couple of faces in the gallery who I know from that connection, but they have many, many resources on co-sheltering initiatives. My Dog is My Home.
Their conference is going to be March 1 through 3 this year. It's virtual, and Allison posted the link in the chat.
Okay, with 3 minutes to go, I think the thing that struck me so profoundly about your book was the stigma and unsafety of people experiencing homelessness. And you talk about police encounters, dogs being taken away, people being screamed at and demeaned. And you talk about how pets can provide kind of a buffer and some humanity, some kindness to people who otherwise are treated pretty poorly. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I thought it surprised me, even the level to which people experience loneliness and isolation.
Oh yeah, especially for people who have been homeless for a long time, and people who've been homeless for a long time tend to be on their own. And so that dog, in most cases, is all they have. And the dog doesn't care if you're unwashed, if you've lost teeth, if you're dirty. And one chapter in the book does go into how homeless people respond to the constant barrage of criticism they hear on the street. And this is true of homeless people without pets. They're always being told, get a job, you lazy bum. But the idea that they get yelled at all the time really struck me. You don't deserve to have a dog. You can't even take care of yourself. And over and over, I heard people say, well, I do take care of myself pretty well under the circumstances. And if I have something to eat, my dog always eats first. And it's a shockingly hard situation.
And in closing, I guess the last question that I was sort of left with is, those of us providing outreach services, giving help, even adopting to people experiencing homelessness, how do we approach a person experiencing homelessness with their pet? What should we say? What should we offer in those moments? Because as you point out, walking up to people with bags of food is perhaps not the best thing we can be doing.
Yeah, somebody just put in the chat the two words compassion and kindness. Eye contact, treating them like a human being, saying hello, treating them like they're not, stigmatized, and then ask them what they need. It might be clean socks rather than dog food. And if you have a way to connect them with the resources like that, then great. But I would say, you wouldn't go to a friend and push things on them. Here's dog food. Here's what I think you need. You would ask what they need. And I think that's what can help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
You're amazing. And it's so inspiring to hear you talk. And I think you should know your book has made a lot of difference. Even in the past few years, a lot of orgs are making progress on this. So we are going to keep bugging you, if that's okay, to keep talking with us and perhaps help us get some materials out there a little bit more widely. Okay, we're at the end of time. We are back next week with a really cool call. And if you are a cat person and you are tired of all this dog stuff, next week is all about cats. We have Stacy Lebaron here. Stacy hosts the Community Cats podcast, and she is truly an expert in this space. But we are going to talk to Stacy about her life and her work and what she thinks is happening in the space of cats and kittens and everything else feline. And we're going to spend most of the hour on that. We have a couple other smaller topics, but we're excited to talk with her. So tell your cat friends to come on over. And this week it will be all about cats and kittens. So thanks for joining us. We're so happy you were here, and I hope you have a great weekend and see you back here next week.